Hi there, and welcome to the Freedom for Immigrants introductory webinar. My name is Liz Wilson, and I'm the Program Manager for Alternatives to Detention within Freedom for Immigrants. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not from the US. I was born in the UK, where I did my training as a social worker. I came to the US in 2017 via Peru, where I was living for 9 years, working in a project promoting education and well-being for families. Okay, well, let's get started and have a look at our agenda. So we're hoping to provide you with some background to the immigrant detention system and expose some of the very real injustices, including talking about how and why we are now detaining more immigrants in the US than ever before. From there, we learn more about who Freedom for Immigrants are and the work that we're doing to end immigrant detention, before looking at the volunteer positions that are available to explore ways that you can get involved. Finally, now that you're inspired to join us as a volunteer, we'll talk about the next steps in the application process. So let's get started. We're going to watch a video which describes the rise of immigrant detention in the US, as well as giving you a feel for the impact of immigrant detention on communities.
At this moment, more than 42,000 immigrants are being held by our government in detention centers across the United States. They are not serving criminal sentences. Instead, most of them are locked up because they are fighting deportation, awaiting decisions on whether they can remain in this country. My husband was one of them. Before he was taken into custody, I knew next to nothing about immigration detention. But once he was detained, our lives became a nightmare. One of the most difficult things for me is how the suffering of families caught in immigration detention is invisible to the general public. The detention and deportation system in the US is vast and ever-growing. As my husband and I were caught within it, I saw that detention sweeps up people from all walks of life. In fact, I learned that anyone who is not a citizen could be detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. Many people in detention have lived here for decades and have children and family members who are US citizens. Others have left everything behind and made the dangerous journey here to ask for asylum in exactly the way the law tells them to do. And many are living here with legal status but end up in detention because of contact with the criminal justice system, no matter how long ago or how minor. One of those people is Astrid, a green card holder and mother of 3. In 2013, ICE showed up at her door to take her into custody. The reason? Nearly 20 years before, she had been convicted of a minor drug offense for which she served only probation. She ultimately won her immigration case, but detention separated her from her young children for 2.5 years. The government calls people like Astrid criminal aliens, but this label is so broad that it includes people with criminal records as minor as speeding or jumping a turnstile, and now, under President Trump, even those who do not have criminal records at all. Overall, more than 50% of all immigrants facing deportation ultimately win the right to stay in this country. But in many places, if a person is in detention, their chance at winning their case drops to less than 10%. That's because detention makes it much harder to access the lawyers, experts, and family members you need to effectively fight your case. A person in detention is shackled behind bars, monitored by armed guards, and thrown in solitary confinement for minor infractions. And they are often held in the very same facilities as people serving time for crimes. Despite being in the same prisons and jails, immigrants do not share the same basic rights, such as a right to a court-appointed lawyer. Many immigrants also do not have the right to a hearing where a judge can determine whether they should even be detained. This forces them to make an excruciating choice: fight their case and continue to suffer in detention for months and often years, or accept deportation in order to escape the hell of detention. Some choose deportation, even though they have strong cases, simply because conditions in detention are so intolerable that they cannot bear the thought of spending another day behind bars. People detained are frequently subjected to rancid food, substandard medical care, and sexual and physical abuse. Some never receive access to fresh air and direct sunlight. Why are conditions in immigration detention facilities so bad? It all comes down to profit. Over 70% of immigrants are held in facilities that are run by private prison companies. These companies have capitalized on racism and xenophobia and treat human beings like commodities. They spend millions of dollars lobbying for more immigration enforcement, and they have been so successful that in 2009, Congress set a quota requiring ICE to maintain 34,000 detention beds at all times. Not because of need or security, but to line the pockets of prison companies. This has led to an explosion in the use of detention. We now imprison more immigrants than ever before, at a cost of over $2 billion a year. Roughly 5 million per day. And who is footing the bill for this quota? Us, the taxpayers. Immigration detention is inhumane, costly, and unnecessary. As I visited my husband in detention, I learned I was not alone. I've joined a growing movement fighting to end this practice. We are pushing Congress to stop detaining people, including women and children seeking asylum. Promoting less costly and more effective community-based alternatives to detention. Lobbying for state laws prohibiting the construction of new private prisons. Coordinating volunteers to visit detained persons to provide emotional support and monitor facility conditions. Challenging detention conditions in court, and more. We need your help to push back against this system. Join us at endisolation.org.
Okay, as you will see, this video was made under our previous name, which was Civic. There's an article on our website where you can read more about the change, but just to let people know, we changed our name because a private prison company decided to start using Civic in their acronym. They became Core Civic. The decision was made just a month after the California legislature had passed the Dignity Not Detention Act, which was a bill we drafted at Freedom for Immigrants to abolish private immigration detention facilities in the state of California. We felt this change in their name was a direct attack on our organization designed to capitalize on the goodwill of our name. In order to avoid lengthy litigation, we just decided to change our name, and that's how we became Freedom for Immigrants. So that's our new name. Although that video was only made a few years ago, it's shocking to recognize that the number of people in immigration detention has risen dramatically. It's now 52,000 people. And what is worse, we can directly track how people in power have used their influence to financially benefit from this system. For example, John Kelly, who was the White House Chief of Staff under the Trump administration and oversaw the horrific child separation policy that's seen thousands of migrant children removed from their parents. John Kelly is now a paid board member for one of the private prisons. So we can see how he's directly profiting now from decisions that he made. So this is the challenge set before us. And how do we at Freedom for Immigrants, how do we bring about change? Let's learn a little more about our organization by hearing from our co-founder and co-executive director, Christina Fiallo, who will talk more about our work and our values.
Hello, interested volunteers. We are so excited to welcome you today. My name is Christina Fiallo. I'm the co-founder and co-executive director of Freedom for Immigrants. We are a national nonprofit working to abolish the U.S. immigration detention system. In order to accomplish this goal, we have a two-pronged approach. First, we visit and monitor 55 of the largest immigration detention facilities on a weekly basis through a network of volunteer visitors. These visitors are going into the detention systems, visiting one-on-one with a person in immigration detention and building a relationship. Through that relationship, advocacy and organizing can happen. In addition, these volunteers really act as the only consistent community presence inside this system, where they're really the eyes and ears of the detention system, monitoring it for human and civil rights abuses. We're then able to use the data and stories to push for systemic change, both within a particular detention facilities, but also with statewide and eventual federal legislation. But we know that that alone is not going to change the system. We also have to envision and to the extent possible, model what a community-based alternative to immigration detention looks like. That's why we have a national bond fund that allows us to get people released from immigration detention, while at the same time ensuring that once they are released, they're provided with the support that they need. And this is our way of showing that we are a country that does not need to imprison immigrants, but we can welcome them. Through a collaborative process in October of 2017, our volunteers around the country established basically 5 values from which all of our work flows. So I would love to encourage you to go to our website in order to review all of those values, but I'll just highlight a few of them here. We are a coalition of people who have directly suffered the injustices of immigration detention, and people like myself who are in solidarity. We are guided by the experiences and leadership of those who've been on the inside. We understand that our service and advocacy efforts, including visitation, can never be politically neutral. And we reject any framework that is purely charitable and replicates structural power inequalities at the interpersonal level. We know that the immigration detention system is built upon a long history of white supremacy, capitalism, and imperialism. It intentionally functions to dispossess marginalized communities and people of their homes and their histories. This is why we support policies that advocate for improved conditions of confinement, provided that they do not conflict with our goal of ending the detention system in its entirety. We recognize that the U.S. immigration detention system is the largest in the world, and that the U.S. government and prison industrial complex have played an active role in the development and infrastructure of detention systems in other countries. By changing the ways that immigrants are treated here in the United States, we can be part of an international movement to transform state and community responses to migration so that immigrants are no longer caged, but truly welcomed. Today, you have the opportunity to learn about all of our programs. Whether or not you're interested in committing to any of these volunteer opportunities, we encourage you to tell your friends, your family about Freedom for Immigrants and encourage them to join or donate. If you have a particular interest in helping us fundraise, we would love to partner with you or with community members to host a house party for Freedom for Immigrants, both to raise awareness of the immigration detention system as well as funds for our much needed programs. Thank you so much for your interest, and I look forward to getting to know you.
Okay. Well, hopefully now you've heard a little bit more about us. You're excited to come and help us end immigrant detention. Let's look at the roles that are available, and then we can go through them one by one. So we have a hotline. We need translation services. There are options to visit people in detention, transport people from detention, volunteer recruitment, fundraising tasks, as Christina was talking about, and hosting and supporting asylum seekers, which is one of our newer programs. Okay, let's have a look through each one of these. And first, we're going to hear from Cynthia about the hotline.
Hi, my name is Cynthia Galas, and I am Freedom for Immigrants National Immigration Detention Hotline Coordinator. The National Immigration Hotline is a free resource available to people in detention and their loved ones. It is answered by volunteers who are trained in how to process requests for support as well as monitor conditions within the immigration detention system. The hotline program is unique in that it allows us access to facilities that we wouldn't have access to otherwise, either because they are very isolated and remote, or they have a lot of restrictions for access. But through the hotline, we are able to answer calls from those facilities and be able to be in touch with people who would otherwise be very isolated. The program asks for a commitment of 2 to 3 hours a week in a set schedule, and you don't have to be multilingual, although it helps to be able to participate in the program. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to anyone in our team. And thank you so much for your interest in volunteering with us.
Okay, so that was information about the hotline. It's a real lifeline for people in detention to be able to get their word out to the world about what they're experiencing. Now we can look at translation opportunities. Translation is written and interpretation is spoken. We need support with both of those. We do ask that people are fluent in English and another language. And this team of volunteers help us, as you can imagine, in a program working with a culturally diverse group of people. This helps us to get all of our materials available in languages that everybody can understand. So that's super important. We also sometimes need support with calls or communicating with professionals who don't speak the native language of the people they're working with. So that can also be a way that you can provide support through translation. We don't request that you are trained or qualified. We don't expect that, at least. We will help to orient people once they start. And that can be the same if you're not sure if your skills are up to speed, then we can also test your translation and make sure that it will be sufficient. So if you're interested in that, please do reach out on the application form. Okay, going to watch another video now about visitation and monitoring within Freedom for Immigrants.
Hello, I'm Rebecca Merton, and I'm the Director of Visitation and Independent Monitoring for Freedom for Immigrants based here in Oakland, California. I'm going to spend the next few minutes sharing with you about the importance of visitation and monitoring and what they look like on the ground. To combat the isolating and torturous experience of immigration detention, communities throughout the U.S. have established volunteer-based visitation groups that offer friendship, support, and a connection to the outside world. It's important to always remember that immigration detention functions to physically and psychologically torture people and thus pressure them into ending their fight for their right to stay in the United States. ICE knows that people in immigration detention have strong cases and valid reasons to fear returning to their countries of origin, so they ensure that detention facilities are as intolerable as possible so that people are unable to spend one more day, let alone an indefinite length of time, in a cage. People who fear torture or death if they were to be deported, or people who don't remember the country of origin because they were brought here as such a small child, may also end up forced to stop fighting their cases just because the conditions and abuses in these facilities are purposefully designed so as to be literally unbearable. Another way that ICE isolates individuals is transferring them to detention facilities far away from their family members, communities of support, and legal counsel. Even if an individual remains in a facility close to their families, visiting hours are usually very limited and difficult for working family members. Also, if family members are undocumented, they may not be able to visit. Visitor volunteers can support people in immigration detention and help create a sense of solidarity and stability amidst such pervasive feelings of chaos, hopelessness, and confusion. In such a dehumanizing environment, it's critical that we continue to affirm the humanity of one another. There are many ways in which visitor volunteers offer assistance in addition to the emotional support that visitation can provide. I will share 10 ways with you now, although this list is certainly not comprehensive as we are constantly learning from people in ICE detention about how we might be able to best support them. One is maintaining connections between them and their loved ones, whether in the US or abroad. Many times, volunteers will be the ones to inform family members that their loved ones have been detained and where they are, because people in ICE detention do not even have the right to a free phone call. Volunteers can also help orient families about the detention facility as well as where else they should seek assistance. Two is that we can refer people to local legal and community organizations with whom we have formed local partnerships. Three is that we can offer pro se resources to people who do not have legal representation. 84% of people in ICE detention do not have legal representation, but we can send them resources to help them fight their cases pro se. These are guides offered in different languages that explain step-by-step what people can do to legally advocate for themselves. 4, volunteers can also help individuals gather necessary documents and records for their case, either from the US or abroad. One of the most absurd aspects of the detention system is that people are somehow supposed to gather evidence from other countries when they are stuck in a cell in the United States. We can help individuals gather documents like country conditions reports and newspaper articles that serve as evidence of their persecution. 5, volunteers can attend immigration court hearings to demonstrate community support to immigration judges. This can be particularly powerful during bond hearings and hearings where the judge has discretion to grant relief to someone. 6, volunteers can help individuals advocate for themselves if they're not getting the medical care that they need or their disability is not being accommodated. We have resources to help advocate from both the inside and from the outside. 7, volunteers can help people publish their art and writing in Imprint, our newspaper, which we're now distributing inside to be an organizing tool as well as a storytelling tool. 8, volunteers can help connect people in immigration detention who don't have documented family members with people who can serve as sponsors or hosts so that they can be released. 9, volunteers can connect people to our network of immigration bond funds to help raise money for people who cannot afford to pay the exorbitantly high bonds that are set for them. And 10, we can help people get to their final destination once they get out of detention. That might be the first meal in a long time they've had with fresh vegetables or a safe place to spend their first night. This may all sound overwhelming, but we do have resources, training, and capacity building that we offer to visitation groups around the country. For example, we have the Visitor Volunteer Guide that's available on our website that offers best practices for people who visit and support folks in immigration detention. We also offer a case management database that visitor volunteers can use to coordinate their advocacy efforts and document human and civil rights abuses. Which brings me to my next topic of monitoring. Visitation groups are often the only community presence in these jails in this whole system that has very little public accountability. People in immigration detention often feel silenced by the fear of retaliation and their isolation from the outside world. However, we're in direct contact with them through visitation and our hotline, and we can work with them to document human rights abuses, civil rights abuses in these prisons and jails across the country on a daily basis. And it can be anonymous if they desire. We then share aggregated data with Congress, the media, and allied organizations. And we've filed civil rights complaints on behalf of hundreds of individuals in immigration detention. So in addition to directly supporting people currently suffering in these jails and prisons, we are simultaneously gathering data and stories to engage in advocacy to address rights violations and push systemic change for the abolition of the immigration detention system.
Okay. Visiting the detention centers is a powerful experience, one that I've done myself, and definitely a way to really understand the impact of this horrific system in a very different way. So everybody should consider potentially going and doing a visit to a detention center if you really want to understand how the system works. Okay, here are some other things that we also need help and support with. This could be a great way to support us, especially if you live near a detention center. When people are released from detention, they're not given any money to return to their loved ones. While we are often able to obtain flights, in some cases at least, we need to transport people to the airport or to the next place where they'll be living. So if you sign up for transportation, your name will be added to a list, and when we have transport requests in your area, you'll receive an email. If you're able to help, then you reply and offer your services. It's as simple as that. So if you are able to do that, please check transportation on our application. Okay. Of course, our work could not take place without the incredible support of people who help us fundraise. A house party, quiz night, silent auction. There's so many options, many of which we haven't even thought of yet. Please feel free to share your ideas. Fundraisers can work independently, arranging events. We would encourage people to involve their local communities as much as possible so that we can gain community support for the work that we're doing. So yes, please be creative, have a think about what you'd like to do, and then let us know. This is one of our newer programs, hosting and sponsoring asylum seekers. And also we have a role in there for people doing community accompaniment, where volunteers help with case management tasks and help people settle in. So really this role can either be about supporting and housing asylum seekers in your own home, or it can be about supporting people who are in that situation. So we're going to watch a video about one journey into sponsorship and hosting to give you an idea of what that looks like.
Es algo tan bonito estar en la calle, sin que nadie te esté gritando, sin reglas, sin estar en cuatro paredes. La libertad es lo mejor que hay, que aprovecharla. Nunca pensé que iba a estar detenida solo por solicitar ayuda. Para mí fue una sorpresa. Solo quedó suspirar y cerrar los ojos y decir, bueno, hay que aguantar, a ver qué es lo que viene, ¿no? Y así pasaron casi 4 meses. Tengo 3 niños, 2 niñas, un niño, tengo una de 16, uno de 14 y una de 10. Están en Venezuela.
Es Nodelkis, es Michelle y Carl.
Están pasando o están viviendo la situación en mi país y por ello me mantengo firme. No hay cómo expresar la situación que realmente vives ahí adentro. Es un infierno. Es un infierno. No, yo entré muy sana. Yo soy una mujer, es raro cuando me enfermo. No, yo entré muy bien. Solo empecé a sentirme mal de mi espalda primero porque duré como 5 días durmiendo en el piso y sin cobija, nada. El frío era horrible. Y me golpeé mi seno izquierdo y bueno, ellos dijeron que se había creado una infección y me dieron un antibiótico por mucho tiempo y este antibiótico inflamó mis articulaciones. Ay, yo quería morirme porque los dolores eran terribles. Pero mayormente estaba dormida porque me daban mucha medicina para estar dormida. Me hacía la pregunta, ¿por qué? ¿Por qué no se encierran aquí? ¿Por qué nos tratan así, no?
In order for a person to be eligible for release from immigration custody via bond or parole, the individual needs to have an address, a place to go. And many people do have that, but certain people don't. And that's where this program really steps in. The Freedom for Immigrants hosting program officially launched this year, but it's existed in some capacity since 2014. It really helps someone to not only be out of detention, but also be in a supporting environment to give them the opportunity to succeed in their case.
Es más fácil.
Solo un poquito, ¿verdad?
To become a host, all I had to do was answer the phone. I got a call from my friend Catherine, and she explained the situation. We have this young Venezuelan woman who needs a place to live, needs a host while she is waiting her asylum hearing. Are you interested? And the answer was yes. We've been delighted to have Noelle here since August. When she moved in here, she could barely walk. I mean, there was clearly some health issues. There were a lot of visits to see doctors, and then there was classes and other things. So during the day, Noelle had a team that she was working with. And in the evenings, we'd often get home late, and Noelle would already be in bed. Noelle had a surgery in early November, and I think we got to know Noelle a lot better then. And then there was the operation, let's get Noelle out of bed. And that we kind of had this crazy idea, let's start cooking. So we took on this, cooking project, and it turned out to be great fun.
No, soy un ave volando, voy de nido en nido. Quién sabe dónde voy a terminar mi destino. Pero nada, solo te queda aguantar, seguir adelante.
Hicimos allá, que es mucho trabajo, ¿sabes? We had a fun time. We called it yaqueria.
What we want to show with this program is that detention is unnecessary, and people across the country who witness the atrocities at the border, who witness families and children being separated, essentially this administration's ongoing war against immigrants, including asylum seekers, we want to show that people don't have to just sit idly by. People want to be part of the solution, and it's been incredibly powerful to give people the opportunity to support families in this way.
Bueno, ellos dicen que me extrañan, que me quieren ver. Solo les digo que tienen que tener fuerza y paciencia para seguir conmigo adelante en todo este proceso, que pronto estaremos juntos, sea allá, sea aquí, pero bueno, ellos son los que me dan la fuerza todos los días para seguir adelante y aguantar lo que tenga que aguantar y luchar, porque sé que me necesitan.
Okay, such an impactful story. I love that video. I just want to mention a few things about the program, because we have changed it somewhat since that time. In particular, we do send out information to people to help them prepare for the role and make sure it's the right decision in terms of sponsorship. We do interviews as well, not only so that we can talk to people and find out more about them, but also to provide opportunities for people to ask more questions about the program. We do also do background checks just to make sure no one's committed offences against children or vulnerable adults. We also, in terms of community accompaniment, they will be supporting hosts and their guests and community accompaniment volunteers. So we have a community accompaniment coordinator who will be in that role and providing support. So you can see we've been able to develop not only the interview system for the hosting and sponsorship program, but also the support that we're offering to people once placements are underway. Okay. Let's move on to the last area, I think it is. We have volunteer recruitment. For those who are happy to help with things like administrative tasks, human resources, we have volunteers that help out on the volunteer recruitment side. These activities can be conducted from home and at times convenient to the volunteer. So this is a role for someone who would prefer not to be on scheduled shifts and prefer to work around their own schedule. So these are the tasks that we have available. That is the end of the webinar, pretty much. What are the next steps? Well, first, we would love to encourage everybody to please follow up on Facebook, Twitter, our website. Please read information about us and support the things that we're saying. Share that information with your friends and family. If you are interested in volunteering, then we will be sending you an application form at the end of the webinar. You need to email us to let us know that you've watched the webinar, and then we will follow up with that link. you will check the options in that of the activities that sound interesting to you, that you would like to be involved in, or that you think you're appropriate for. And then we will contact you from those individual teams within Freedom for Immigrants and follow up with whatever's necessary. So either interviews, or we'll, in the case of transport, for example, we'll put you on the list. In the case of visitation, then we will connect you with a visitation group in your area. So the next step is simply to reach out to the person who sent you this video and ask them to send you the application form, and then the process will continue from there. Thanks very much, and hopefully we'll be welcoming you to the team soon. All the very best.